What is going on, you guys? So today we're going to go over 5 ways to help you gain muscle fastest. Now before we get into these 5 ways, we're going to start by re-going over the 3 mechanisms you need in order to build muscle. And that's mechanical tension, so the amount of weight or force you're actually putting onto your muscles. Metabolic stress, so how long you're creating this tension. So when you're using anaerobic glycolysis, which means just a lot of sets and reps in a short period of rest time. And then muscle damage, so breaking down those muscle fibers in order to build them back up. Now, these 3 mechanisms are needed in order for you to actually build muscle, so we're going to utilize these 5 aspects in order to help contribute to those 3 mechanisms for you to optimize your gains as fast as possible. Now, before I get into that, I want to also point out, so an optimal rep range for hypertrophy muscle building is 6 to 12 reps. Sets a range from around 3 to 5, and your rest period should be between 60 to 90 seconds. So with all that being said, let's get right into the 5 ways for you to build muscle fastest. So the first thing I want to go over is lifting heavy. This is such a misconception with building muscle. The stronger you are, the more potential you have to put on size. And that being said, one of the main aspects of muscle building is mechanical tension. So the actual weight you're putting onto those muscles. The more weight you're able to put onto those muscles, the more muscle fibers you're actually going to break down in order for them to build back up and build that muscle. So when I say lift heavy, I'm not saying max out, I'm not saying go to failure every time. What I am saying is a great range is 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max. So training in that frequency and also allowing yourself to get to those 6 to 12 reps. Now this is how you're going to optimize your gains, guys. Like I said, there's a correlation between size and strength. The stronger you are, the more potential you're going to have to put on muscle size. I think way too many people are using lighter weights than they actually should be because 1, they don't set themselves up for a successful progressive overload, which simply just means you're going up in weight and getting stronger, so increasing your muscle potential and building size. And the reason a lot of people aren't using as heavy weight as they should be is 1, they think strength doesn't associate with size, and that's completely false. 2, they're just focusing too much on their form. And 3, they're worried that their muscles aren't actually going to be able to handle getting into the 6 to 12 rep range. Well guys, that's why you're not going 100% to your full max. You're using a weight that you know you can get the certain amount of reps, and then you're building up over time. Progressive overload, guys, it's a consistent build up. So by taking advantage of progressive overload, meaning getting stronger while also utilizing the optimal hypertrophy rep range of 6 to 12 reps, you're actually increasing the amount of mechanical tension that you're placing onto those muscles and breaking down more muscle fibers, so increasing the amount of muscle damage. So you're actually optimizing 2 key factors in muscle building by lifting heavier weights. Just make sure, guys, you're not obviously going too heavy, and you're keeping sure your form is intact, but don't be such a form Nazi that you don't allow yourself to push yourself strength wise, because the more strength you have, the more potential you're going to have to build size in those muscles. So increase that mechanical tension by upping that weight, guys. Like I said, a normal recommendation is between 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max. Now the second way we're going to get into how you can optimally build muscle fastest is talking about high intensity. You have to be training at some form of high intensity in order to quickest and most optimally build muscle. Now there are different ways that you can be training in this high intensity aspect, which is why I'm going to break it down into some subcategories. But basically you have to understand, guys, is volume equals size. And we're going to relate this mostly to the metabolic stress category. So basically when you're going to be utilizing anaerobic glycolysis, so in simpler terms, doing a lot of sets and reps in a short period of rest. One great method to up the intensity of your workouts, whether you're a beginner or an advanced lifter, is by taking advantage of drop sets. Now an example of a drop set is you're doing a specific weight for say 10 reps, you drop at 10 pounds, do 10 more reps, drop at 10 pounds to do 10 more reps. That'd be an example of a triple drop set. So a drop set is activating more muscle fibers. You're actually using more slow twitch fibers because you're going for a prolonged period of time without a rest period. You're going right into that next set of 10 after you do the first one. This is increasing the amount of metabolic stress, so increasing the tension you are using. You're using more of the endurance aspect, and actually you're going to be breaking down more muscle fibers due to that increased period of constant tension. So drop sets are actually activating more muscle fibers than a standard one set of 10 reps would do. So by increasing the amount of muscle fibers you're targeting, by adding prolonged period of tension, so increasing the metabolic stress, you'll actually be increasing the amount of muscle damage. Another way you can up the intensity of your workouts by increasing the amount of volume is actually by not always going to failure. And what I mean by that is we're going to increase the metabolic stress by adding more repetitions from a shorter rest period. And by doing this and by not going to failure, I'm going to use the bench press as an example with 225 pounds. So oftentimes you'll see a lot of people, they'll go to 225 and do 10 reps and they'll burn their muscle out. So the next set they're only able to get 8 and the next set they're only able to get 6. Now by doing this, you've only hit now 24 reps. So say you're going to use a weight that you're going to do 3 sets of 10. You just hit 30 reps. So volume equals size. By using a weight, maybe not necessarily as heavy, but you can progressively build. Like I said in the last point of lifting heavy, you can progressively build to get stronger at that, but you don't want to jump right into it where you're going to be doing a weight that always forces you to the point of failure. You're not going to get as many repetitions, so not nearly as much volume if you're always going to failure. This is going to really relate to the amount of intensity you do. So volume equals size. So you want to use a weight, guys, that you're able to get that full 3 sets of 10 while still pushing yourself, but also ensuring you're getting the amount of reps you need in order to establish that increased amount of metabolic stress to break down more muscle damage. Supersets are another great way to up the intensity of your workouts because you're going to be targeting actually different muscle fibers by utilizing different motions through that superset, so you're actually increasing the amount of metabolic stress onto your muscles but expanding the amount of muscle fibers you're actually targeting. So this is going to increase the amount of muscle damage by actually lowering the amount of rest period while also increasing the amount of volume. So essentially the whole point behind upping the intensity of your workouts is increasing the amount of metabolic stress that's going to be placed onto your muscles to have more muscle damage. So when you guys think of increasing this metabolic stress through upping the intensity, I want you to think volume and tension. Now by increasing this amount of volume, so volume equals size, it's just the process of using a weight that will allow you to get the amount of volume you need. So go back to those 3 sets of 10 reps. I want you guys to push yourselves with the strength, but if you have to lighten the weight to ensure you get the amount of reps you need, then you have to do that. Volume is more important when it comes to building muscle. But that being said, it's important to have that progressive overload of strength, which is why I say progressive when you can consistently build up. You're utilizing that mechanical tension aspect, but also increase the amount of volume, so increasing the amount of metabolic stress. You're going to be utilizing 2 key mechanics. So by upping the amount of weight over time, you're going to increase the mechanical tension, and by making sure you get the amount of volume, you're increasing the amount of metabolic stress that's placed on those muscles. So all in all, both those factors combined, you're increasing the amount of muscle damage. Now the tension aspect, you're also actually utilizing volume too, because by doing those drop sets or those supersets, you may not be using as much weight per se because you're doing multiple things at once, but you're increasing the amount of muscle fibers that are being activated and recruiting different muscle fibers than a standard set of 3 sets of 10 would be. And you're using the same amount of volume or even more because you're doing more repetitions at a shorter rest period. So guys, it's very imperative for your muscle building that you increase the amount of volume and tension you're using by just upping the intensity of your workouts by whatever means you find most optimal for you. The third way we're going to talk about how you can quickest and most often build muscle mass is by hitting every muscle group at least twice a week. Now there's a ton of theories about, it's really about at the end of the week the total amount of volume. So whether that's in 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days, it's about the total amount of volume. Now I definitely agree with that because the more volume, the more metabolic stress you're going to put onto those muscles. But my theory is if you separate the days, so you work out each muscle group at least twice a week, you're actually able to take more advantage of the mechanical tension aspect. Say you're doing it all on 1 day, you're not going to be able to lift as heavy as you could if you separated your workouts. So because your central nervous system is going to get fried if you're doing so many exercises and so much volume in 1 day. But if you say you separate the muscle groups, you're not decreasing the amount of volume, you're just separating the days that you're doing all of this volume. So by doing this, I really believe it allows you to place more mechanical tension on those muscles because you're going to be able to do more weight since you're not doing so much at once. So when it becomes more about the weight and the volume, you're going to be optimizing the amount of muscle you're building, because you're taking advantage of two of the key aspects of muscle building, which is the mechanical tension and the metabolic stress, which, as we know, which will help with more muscle damage. So that's my theory behind why I believe you should hit every muscle group at least twice a week, and why it'll help you get gains quickest, because you're breaking up that volume, so you're able to add more intensity by actually increasing the amount of weight you're going to be using, because your central nervous system will be able to handle more separately than all at once. Also, by hitting every muscle group at least twice a week, it takes more advantage of the muscle damage aspect, because you're allowing your muscles to recover and then more frequently break them down and then build them back up again. So that's why I always recommend you have at least a 24-hour rest period before hitting the same muscle group. You're taking full advantage of the muscle damage and the aspect of tearing those micro tears in those muscles, and then building new muscle tissue in order of actually experiencing growth in those muscles. So by taking advantage of multiple workout days for every muscle group per week, with having that 24-hour rest period at least in between, you're taking advantage of not only a mechanical tension, because you're able to lift more weight by separating the amount of volume you're doing at once, emphasizing the amount of metabolic stress, so added tension onto those muscles, so the increased amount of volume by upping the intensity. You're actually also taking advantage of muscle damage, so you're utilizing all three major concepts of actual muscle building by splitting up the amount of volume you're doing per week, but still getting that total amount of volume at the end of the week. So that's why I recommend you hit the muscle groups at least twice a week, because you're able to take advantage of every single aspect of muscle building. Now, the fourth way we're going to talk about how you can quickest and most optimally put on muscle mass is by something you shouldn't do, and that's not overdoing cardio. I cannot preach this enough, guys, especially as we start shredding for summer and trying to lose fat. Do not do too much cardio, because you will waste muscle mass. Now, my recommendation, if you're gonna do cardio, do not go over 20 minutes and do a form of high intensity interval training. High intensity interval training, my personal favorite style of that is Tabata, is the best way in burning fat utilizing cardio while also being able to build muscle mass. Now, let's use a 6-mile run for an example. That is a long endurance, prolonged period of cardio. That is gonna, yes, burn a lot of fat, but it's also gonna waste a lot of muscle mass in the process. You're using energy reserves that goes into building that muscle to perform this prolonged period of cardio. So it is not optimal in what we are trying to do. When you're gonna be focusing on fat loss, really, guys, you have to place a huge emphasis on your diet, but utilizing this high intensity interval training aspect, that's going to allow you to actually decrease the amount of time you're placing on your cardio, but upping the amount of fat loss you're doing. Because, guys, remember, just like I said in the second point, high intensity, it's actually much more optimal than doing anything at low intensity, obviously. So don't do too much cardio, guys. One of the biggest mistakes you can do is doing too much cardio, because even if you want to be skinnier, no one wants that very thin look. Like, I personally if someone called me thin, I take that as an insult. I want a fit look, and by doing that, by doing too much cardio, you may be burning fat, but like I've already mentioned, you're going to be wasting muscle mass in the process. So don't overdo cardio. I really don't recommend you go over 20 minutes, and I recommend that interval ranges to optimally spike that heart rate and increase your metabolism actually throughout the entire day. So don't overdo cardio, guys, or you're really going to slow or even decrease the amount of muscle mass you're adding onto your body. Now, the fifth way to optimize your muscle gains as fast as possible is understanding how much you're eating. Guys, calories fuel your muscles. You have to be able to be consuming enough calories in order to recover properly and to be in an anabolic state, so experience growth. So what a lot of people don't understand is they complain about not putting on enough size, but in fact they're just not consuming as many calories as they actually need. So if you have no idea how much calories you're actually consuming a day, I definitely recommend you try logging, whether it's a day, 3 days, or a week, to get a general gist of how much you're actually consuming. So you can be either in a calorie surplus, a calorie maintenance, or a calorie deficit. Now, if you're cutting, I don't actually recommend you put yourself into a diet calorie deficit. And the reason because when you actually put yourself at a calorie maintenance value and just allow your exercise to be the calorie expenditure that puts yourself into that deficit category. That way, you're not going into a drastic deficit and not being able to build muscle or just completely slow down the muscle gaining process. So if you're really trying to optimize your muscle gains as fast as possible, which is what this video is about, you actually want to be eating a calorie surplus. Now, if you eat too much in a calorie surplus, you will put on more muscle faster because you're consuming more calories, giving yourself more energy, but you're going to put on more fat. So my recommendation is to eat in a slight calorie surplus, so 200 to 300 more calories than your maintenance value. And by doing this, you're actually going to be allowing your exercise to put yourself back into more of a maintenance value, but you're consuming through your diet enough as you need to put on muscle mass. So you're going to be decreasing the amount of fat gain while optimizing the amount of muscle gain. So basically it's a win-win, especially if you're cutting. You won't be putting on any muscle. You may not be losing fat as fast as if you were in a calorie deficit to begin with, but you're going to be slowly decreasing your body fat while also being able to up the amount of muscle mass you can put onto your body. So knowing how many calories you're actually consuming is a huge factor in building your muscles. You have to fuel them in order for them to experience growth. So if you're not consuming enough, you're not going to see nearly as many gains, if any. If you're consuming a maintenance value, you're going to see some progress, but not as fast. So if you consume more than your maintenance value, then you're going to experience growth the fastest. And like I said, guys, I recommend you eat in a slight calorie surplus while allowing you to naturally expend calories through your exercise and daily activity to get yourself into that more maintenance value of energy that you're taking into your body via diet. So that is the optimal way, in my opinion, to be able to put on muscle mass while minimizing the amount of fat gain in the process. So that's actually what I do when I cut, because I let my cardio take my calorie expenditure for what it actually needs to be. So guys, I hope you like this video. Make sure you like it, subscribe to the channel. This is actually going to be a new series, 5 ways to do certain things, and this one obviously is about gaining muscle as fast and optimally as possible. So leave a comment if you have any questions. I'll make sure to answer you guys, and always thank you everyone who supports us. You guys are the best, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.